Hi everyone, it's me. So this week I wanted to talk books. Let's forget England, Canada, travel stuff just for like 10 minutes and let's talk books. So yeah, that's it really. Books. Just a side note, it's a beautiful sunny day, so I need to face this way, otherwise if I face that way it's too dark. And I am actively sweating right now. It is hot. Why is it hot? I don't know. So, just letting you know. So without further ado, let's go. Now, I actually didn't realize how many books I had accumulated in this house. So I don't want to talk about anyone too long because this video will be a million years. So let's just do like real quick reviews. So first up, let's talk Chuck. I can never say your last name. I don't know why. My brain just won't say it. So this is the guy who did Fight Club. Wonderful. So much better than the movie, and the movie's so good. So you can imagine how good the book is. Definitely recommend. However, next in line is Invisible Monsters by Chuck P. I loved Invisible Monsters. I've not read it in quite a while. It's really fascinating. And as you can tell, you've got this beautiful beauty queen with like messed up part of her face. But when you turn it upside down, it's a sad clown. And that kind of reflects the ideas in the book of how we see ourselves and all the rest of it. So yeah, Invisible Monsters is really fantastic. Check that out. I also read Damned. Bit gross. I mean, I know his style is supposed to sort of shock you and gross you out, but I thought Damned was like a little bit gross. I've read some of his other stuff as well that I don't remember, but these are the ones that I actually own, so yeah. All in all, check him out. Fight Club, absolutely, and Invisible Monsters is really fascinating. They're just, I find his writing is very unique, whether you like it or not. It's just very different. Now, my mom just came to visit recently, and I asked her to bring some of my books from my bookshelf back home, because obviously all my books are in Canada. Duh. However, she brought me some goodies. One of my favorites is SlaughterhouseFive. I first read this and it went completely over my head. I didn't get it at all. And then I came back to it a few years later and reread it, and it was like, oh my god. Really fascinating. Not for everybody, but I really enjoyed it. Plus it's like, it's not that big, really. It's a small one. And my copy is falling apart. I also asked her to bring me Trainspotting, which I also, oh, look at the reflection of that one. I really like Trainspotting. It is tough to read, like the subject matter is pretty heavy, but what I found really fascinating was the way it is written. It's written phonetically, so the way that people speak is written the way it sounds, so you're trying to read it and you can see the accent on the page. You're just like, I have no idea what these people are saying. The accent is so heavy. But what's really fascinating is you kind of get like maybe a quarter way into the book, and all of a sudden you don't see the accent anymore. It's like part of the character, and you can easily read these weird spelled words because it just makes sense in that accent. I don't know if that makes sense, but this is really fascinating in terms of like spoken language and how you can portray that through text. That sounded really lame, but it's a great book. Again, not for everybody. Get some of that reflection. Lots of sweating happening right now. Next up are some like psychology books, which are always really interesting. I read recently It's All in Your Head, which is about psychosomatic illness. So the author is a doctor, and it talks about her real life experiences with psychosomatic illness and how our brains and our bodies can deal with stress and trauma and sometimes turn that into a real illness. Even though there's nothing physically wrong with us, our brain thinks there is. Anyways, really fascinating. It kind of drags a little bit because it goes into a lot of the history of like mania and mental illness in some cases. So it can be a little bit heavy on the history, but the real life stories are really fascinating. God, I need to take a breath. So if you're interested in any type of medical type books, psychosomatic illness, psychology, yeah, really interesting. So it's called It's All in Your Head, Stories from the Frontline of Psychosomatic Illness. Cool. In the same vein as that, a few years ago, I read Brain on Fire, which is still probably one of my favorite books so far. It's about this journalist who basically loses her mind. And it is a true story. It's her writing about her experiences. It's really interesting on how we look at mental illness, and just wow, so good. This one was #1 New York Times bestseller, and it's just absolutely fantastic. And again, a real story about how all of a sudden this hard-working woman just wakes up and is losing her mind. Incredible. Now, what I tend to do, I don't necessarily have authors that I follow. I have a couple, but a lot of times I can't remember the names. So what I tend to do is I go on my Facebook page like once a year and just say to all my Facebook friends, what is your favorite book? Doesn't matter what genre, doesn't matter how big of a book or how small, just tell me your favorite book. And a lot of times I will just go out and rent or buy that book, having no idea what it's about or the subject matter or the genre. I just go for it, which is actually so much fun because it's like a big mystery. You have no idea what you're about to read. So one of the books that my friend suggested to me is Eleanor Park. This is probably the only sort of like relationship, romantic-ish kind of book that I have. That's usually not really a genre that I like. I tend to go for like sci-fi, fantasy, crime, mystery, comedy, horror, you know, a little bit dark. But they said this was a really fantastic book, so I went out and bought it, you know. This as well is a #1 New York Times bestseller book, so you kind of know it's got to be okay, you know, like at least decent. It's heartbreakingly relatable, let's say that, of this relationship between Eleanor and Park. Just so sweet. I read it in maybe 2 days because I just thought, I'm not going to put this down, I'm just going to read it. So definitely, if you want to break your own heart, go ahead and read this. Now, more along the lines of genres that I like to read, I read Ready Player One. So good. So good. Again, I read this in a couple days. I basically parked my butt on the couch and just finished it. Like, real good. They did the movie recently. Wow. Didn't that suck? I mean, if you hadn't read the book and saw the movie, you probably thought it was a good movie, right? Like, there's lots of special effects and like cool stuff happening, but I just felt like it was absolutely nowhere near what the book was. Like, not even similar. Like, two separate things. However, Ready Player One was really fun book. Read the book. Forget the movie. Read the book. All about video games, pulp culture, a lot of sort of 80s references to movies and music and TV, and I just thought it was really fun and it was really different. And even though it takes place in this virtual reality world sort of thing, it was really easy to follow what was happening. Like, it's an easy read. Really fun. Check it out, definitely. Another one I bought because somebody told me that they liked it was Those Who Wish Me Dead. This again is more my sort of genre, crime, mystery. It was really good. I read this sort of 2 years or so ago, so I don't remember tons of it, but I just remember it was really good. Again, read it in like 2 days. That's a sign of a good book, when you just keep yourself in your pajamas on the couch, you're like gross and greasy, and you just read, like just read straight through. But definitely check out Those Who Wish Me Dead. Really interesting mystery, you know, like a murder mystery, fun stuff. Good book. Now, American Gods, wow, what a novel, right? American Gods was one of those books that had been on my list for years. And the queue for American Gods at the library was like 400 people, like in line. Just like, I'm never ever gonna read it. So I bought it. That kind of solves the problem, doesn't it? Now, American Gods, a little bit dusty, first of all. What do I say about American Gods? Very interesting. Difficult to read, I found. I put it down for a few weeks because something in my life was happening, I don't remember, and it was very difficult to pick it back up and get back into the story of what was happening. But it's very creative, it's very interesting, it's well written, but it's a hard book, at least I've found, to get into and to follow and to stay into it. And it's so long, look at that, my goodness. But I'm glad I read it, it was worth it. Just, I probably won't read it again because I'm not committed to that many pages. Now, a book that really surprised me, and again, I think all of these books were books that have been recommended to me. I didn't pick any of these, so I take no credit. These are books that were recommended to me. And one of the ones that I really enjoyed was The Demonologist. Now, I just realized this one says the #1 Canadian bestseller. So I think this is a Canadian Dan Brown, basically. Unless Dan Brown's Canadian, wouldn't that be cool? I don't think he is. So The Demonologist, nice and short, really interesting, definitely gave off Dan Brown vibes. I think a lot of this takes place in Venice, if I remember. So lots of like dark mystery, like supernatural. I mean, he's a demonologist. How cool. Andrew Piper is the internationally best-selling author of 6 novels, including Lost Girls, which was named one of the scariest novels ever by USA Today. He lives in Toronto. Lost Girls, that's interesting. Maybe that's next in line. Anyway, Demonologist was really fun, dark, scary. I remember reading it late at night and giving myself anxiety. What a great idea. Plus, it is nice and short. And sometimes you just need a scary short book. So check it out. Plus he's Canadian. Check it out. Okay. How do I begin to describe this book? This is one of my all-time favorite books, so don't be rude, but it is The Name of the Wind. I've probably read it maybe 4 or 5 times. It looks chunky, but it is such an easy read. I absolutely loved it. Okay, story time. So I went to this bookstore back in Canada, like one of those tiny little self-owned, this guy just ran this bookstore, and it was one of those ones where it had books like to the ceiling, like just piled on top of each other. There's books all over the floor and piles. It was just like chaos, basically. And the owner comes up and he asks me, what kind of books I'm interested in. And I say, I like kind of sci-fi, fantasy. I loved Harry Potter, loved sort of like that type of read, basically, but I'm open to anything. And the guy says, okay, hold on one second, I gotta go get you the best book you'll ever read. And he goes down into this basement, and like 5 minutes later he comes back up with this. It was in perfect condition. It's a little bit worn out now because I've read it so many times, but he tells me, this is going to be the best book you've ever read, you've got to read it. So naturally I buy it because I take suggestions very seriously. This was $10 Canadian, that's it. That's like nothing. And it is such a fantastic book. It's very Lord of the Rings meets Harry Potter. It's fantasy, but there's no like elves and stuff in it. It's more people living in this sort of medieval world, and there's some like demons maybe. Just like a little bit. But this book is absolutely fantastic. I recommend it to anybody who likes sort of fantasy, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings kind of stuff. And it's so easy to read, which is really fantastic. Sometimes fantasy books are really difficult to get into because you have to like understand the world first and like the different races and like species of things. And this is just very straightforward, wonderful, so good. So this is the first one. The second one is out, also super good. I think I lent that to somebody, but I don't remember who. If you have the second book, which I think is called A Wise Man's Fear, let me know. I don't know where mine is. I've given it to somebody and I don't remember. But the second one is just as good, and it really sort of connects with this first one. Then I think he was writing the third one, but I don't know if that one's come out yet. So keep an eye out. Really just fantastic books. However, Patrick then did a sort of side book, The Slow Regard of Silent Things. Very tiny. It's like book 1.5, like you don't have to read it. It's not part of the main story, but it's sort of like a side story. And it follows one of the lesser known characters in the main story. So this is like her book. And I just didn't like it. I'm sorry, buddy. It just was so boring. I finished it because, I mean, a child could finish this. It's so short. But I just didn't like it. I'm sorry. However, it was kind of cool because they had sort of drawings throughout the story, and I mean, it's still written very well. I just didn't really like the story itself. So, but one last thing, read it. It will change your life. One of the only authors that I can ever remember is David Wong, and I love him. Marry me. You know, if you want to, that would be cool. Hey, what's up? So, David Wong, it's a pen name. That's obviously that's not his real name. But he has done some of my all-time favorite books. First off is John Dies at the End. Very dark, very funny. Second book is This Book is Full of Spiders. Seriously, dude, don't touch it. Again, very dark, very funny. Then number 3, I just read this past Christmas, called What the Hell Did I Just Read? Again, very dark, very funny. So these are all in the same series with the same characters. They're all kind of about the same size. They're pretty hefty. But these are some of the funniest books I've ever read. And they're so, I mean, they're so dark. They're very dark and they're scary. And yet he has the ability to make them funny. How do you do that? I don't know. But I remember getting John Dies at the End, and I read it in 2 days. How did you guess? Then I went out and bought This Book is Full of Spiders again, read it very quickly. It's exactly like the first one, so if you liked it, check that one out, and this one as well. Not as good, because I think it's the same sort of style. It's the same thing again, but still really, really funny. Currently, I am reading his next novel, Futuristic Violence and Fancy Suits. So this is a brand new story, new characters, new plot, all the rest of it. It's not demonic like the first ones. There's lots of demons and like that sort of stuff. This is much more a commentary on society and a culture and technology and our obsession with broadcasting our lives online. So I'm like maybe almost halfway. It's really good. Not as good, I think, as John Dies at the End, because I really like that dark, demonic comedy so much. But this is really interesting, and he has some really funny insights on life as we know it, essentially. And again, he's a New York Times best-selling author, so he knows what he's doing. So if you have a chance, check out David Wong. Really funny, really insightful and dark and interesting. Now I do have 2 more books. Wow, these are dusty. At Christmas time, I asked my friends and acquaintances what was their favorite book. A lot of these are from Christmas that I've read since then and were like recommended. So 2 more of the recommended books are All the Light We Cannot See, which was the winner of the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction 2015, New York Times #1 bestseller. The Times calls it sublime. And it's got a nice blue cover because I definitely look at the covers. And I also got The Secret History, which, again, an international bestseller, an author of a Pulitzer Prize winner 2014. So these were 2 books that were recommended by friends. I can't remember who, sorry. And I got them for Christmas, but I haven't read them yet. Yeah, they're in the queue. There's a video game queue and there's a book queue. Wow, I feel like I've been talking for an eternity. I am so sorry. But yeah, these are some of the books that I've been reading in the last few years. I mean, the ones that I own. I love a good library, you know, love renting a book. But these are definitely the ones that I've purchased, for better or for worse, and some of the ones I still need to read. But if you have a question about any of these books specifically, let me know and I can answer in more detail. Some of these books are so good, you guys. So good. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, bye! I feel like this video has been 8 million years long, and I am so sweaty.